And welcome back. It's hour number 2 of the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230, online at bullfallsradio.com, mobile devices, and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app. With former Wausau West High School head football coach Jason Foster, I'm Chad Holmes. Again, if you missed our first hour, we had Logan George, our student-athlete guest from DC Everest. Again, if you missed any of the programs, you can go to bullfallsradio.com and then just click on sports, and you'll be able to find the Big High School Sports Show page and listen to our previous episodes. And right now, we're very happy to welcome our coach guest for this week from the undefeated Wittenberg-Burnhamwood Chargers, head coach Jason Rick. And Coach, first of all, thank you for coming on. I know we had a little bit of a phone tag here, but you know those phones sometimes just don't ring, but really happy to have you back on the program.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, I bet we were able to get through.
Absolutely. Well, number one, before we talk about a huge game coming up this week, let's talk about the first 6 weeks of the season. 6-0 overall, you're 4-0 in your conference. Basically, how has the season gone? Has this season gone as you expected with this group?
Yeah, this group is a hit and miss. You never know what you're going to get. Kind of going into last year, we bring back a lot of kids from last year who got a lot of playing time. I mean, only losing 6 or 7 seniors this year to having 14 coming in. So we had high expectations, all of them, especially with an early exit last year.
Yeah, Coach, welcome. Thanks for being on. Before I get started, I just got a text message a couple minutes ago from Josh Nowinski, our offensive line coach at Wausau West. He wanted to make sure that we said hello to you for him, kind of I'll call him a Wittenberg-Burnhamwood legend. You can call him whatever you want, probably off
Absolutely.
the air.
If you see him, let him know I said hi too, and think about the years with him a lot. He was a big influence for me growing up. He was our defensive coordinator and a great guy.
Awesome. I will definitely pass that along. Well, congratulations on a great start to your season. Like what has been the key to your success? Obviously having some good returners and some guys with some positive experience, but having that early exit last year, what would you do in the off season? What changed from where you were at the end of last year to where you guys are at right now?
I think they were hungry. The kids were disappointed with their early exit. Give a lot of credit to that team last year that we battled in the playoffs. They definitely weren't a 6th seed. I think they kind of got a hose on, or raw end of the deal on that one.
Yep.
But they're hungry. They worked hard, and I think having 14 seniors really helps. You have a lot of leadership, and we have a lot more depth than we've ever had in years past. So that's really come in handy.
And it looks like you're a multifaceted football team. Me and Coach Foster were talking in the first hour. We see you're able to run the football. You're able to get some significant plays with your pass game, and your defense has been solid so far.
Yeah, our defense has been tremendous. They fight, they battle, they hate giving up a yard. And it showed. In that goal line stand. They kind of bailed me out against Amherst. It was 4 seconds left on the 1 yard line, and I made some bonehead calls in the first. I got a little too aggressive, and I put us in a bad spot, and the kids ended up bailing me out at the end. So, and that's what I think attributes to a lot of our success. We're dynamic. If you're going to stop the run, we have some really good athletes that, are on the edge, and our quarterback connects, and sometimes we get a little lucky. Big things happen for us. And if you're going to take away our receiving threats, you're going to leave the middle open. And we have a lot of returning guys up the middle, and led by Charlie Nowinski, our center. He's a big kid, and it's nice having an anchor like that who can follow right up the middle.
Yeah, you talked about that great win against Amherst earlier. What does winning a game like you won that against a perennial powerhouse, what does that do for the rest of the season, and what can you use that for when you look towards the postseason as well?
Oh, that's huge momentum for us. It builds confidence. We played some of the smaller teams this year, and it's been tough looking for a battle, and for us, being down at halftime, overcoming adversity, and things weren't going our way, and we had to fight back in it, and then we had to do a goal line stand. It just shows that, we can compete. Amherst is no slouch. They put up a battle, and they're a really good team. They're very well coached. So I think that, that's a huge confidence boost going, hey, we can play with anybody. You step on that field, you plan up 11 guys against us, we have a chance. And that's just confidence going forward and going that, hey, we can get punched in the mouth once in a while and still be okay.
Again, we're talking to Wittenberg-Burnhamwood Charger head football coach Jason Rick here on the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Continuing maybe to piggyback on that question from Coach Foster, every week you want to come in and dominate, obviously, but at the same time, for the future, for games like this week, for games that you're going to hopefully have to participate in the next number of weeks, to be in situations like you were in that game at Amherst has to have been just an incredible learning experience as well for these guys to be able to, number one, be put in that situation, and then number two, to be able to perform in that situation.
Oh, absolutely. We brought that up in the past going into this week, with Stratford coming in. It's a huge game for us. I mean, I think, in my opinion, I think a lot of others too, it's going to, the winner of this game is going to win our conference.
Yeah.
Going into that, in the years past, our team would have gotten on each other and they would have started pointing fingers. And I think, coming out, being down at halftime, I think we would have probably just rolled over as the years passed, going, okay, hey, yep, we lost to Amherst, we battled at least a half, we were in it. But to show that, hey, we're at, not just being in the game, but being able to come back, says a lot about them and the fight that we have.
Yeah, shows like this, TV, social media, they love statistics. So oftentimes the offense gets a lot of credit. Sounds like you have a great quarterback this year, some nice running backs, and putting up big numbers in big games. You'd mentioned earlier a little bit about your defense. Tell me about some of the guys who are anchoring that defense this year.
Oh, having a kind of running a 3-4 package or 5-2, whatever you want to call it nowadays. But we got a lot of senior leadership. We have Charlie up the middle, having a 6'5", 300-pound guy that plugs the middle. You can't really run against him. You kind of got to go away, and he can take on double teams. He can take on the triple teams. It's nice having. You got to have that when you run a true nose. We got guys, Jacob Grashik and Connor Grashik. Same last name, no relation. Kind of funny. But they set the edge really well. And then we got a lot of skill guys that can cover matchup with receivers, so we don't have to play the zone. We'll play the one-on-one matchup and trust that our athletes will make the plays when they're put into a situation. And we kind of have a new kid, Boone Shire, playing in the middle along with Marshall Fraser. Marshall's been there probably 3 or 4 years, but Boone's kind of a newcomer, junior year. He's playing football. He's never played the middle linebacker. He's really done well catching on and putting as a true middle linebacker. So, I mean, it's a complete effort. You can't just rely on one guy. You got to use all of our strengths, and, we fill in the gaps when we need it. But we've had a lot of guys step up who we didn't think that would maybe contribute as much as they have, that have really filled in the holes that we needed people to step into. So it can't just be one guy. It's a complete effort, and we got 11 guys on the field, but we got a lot of guys that are making plays, that are 1 and 2 guys deep that we trust putting in any game situation.
Coach Foster asked you again about the defense because no statistics there. Well, I'm the media guy, so we'll ask you about the guys who put up the numbers. What about offensively? You've been putting up, huge numbers offensively so far this season. And could you talk a little bit about the guys who've been performing well, perhaps starting with your quarterback? And I'm going to let you pronounce his last name because, doggone it, I've been having trouble all season long.
Hey, you're not the only one, so don't worry. It's Nathan Wapakemi. He's a good kid. He's a second-year starter. Last year in the shoes of the previous quarterback, he had a lot to live up with. And he had some growing pains, which is, it's expected. But I think he's really taken on the leadership role this year, and he's got some high expectations, and he can compete at a very high level. He's worked hard in the weight room. He's gotten strong, and he's learning really how to run the ball and make his reads throwing the ball. I mean, he's got a great arm. It helps that he's a pitcher in baseball, so he can, he likes throwing it deep, but, as you're talking about statistic guy, that's not a very high percentage pass. So as much as he likes to launch it, we got to rein him back sometimes. And it's really, I think, actually been a blessing in disguise. We don't have one big guy. Last year we had David Gauderman. He was a workhorse in the backfield. He was a big bruiser running back. Teams can prepare for him. This year I think, very tough to prepare for because we have 4 or 5 very athletic receivers who are quick. They got good hands. They run great routes that we trust. We don't have we're not just hiding a guy out there, spreading them out wide. Like we trust that the guys that are out there that play receiver, that they're going to make a play, and they're going to, they can catch the ball. And then we got 3 guys that are getting reps, or 2 guys that are running the ball from running back position, and plus our quarterback, who's also got to be leaned on as a runner. And I think he's actually leading our team in stats wise. But Marshall Fraza and Casey Kilman, Keegan Benbow, those are 3 senior receivers that are out there every game, and sometimes they don't catch the ball a game, sometimes they'll make 5 catches, and then we got a couple juniors going back to Boone Shire. He plays a little bit of offense, but then you got Jet Rogowski and a new guy, first year playing, is Owen Dickman, who's really stepped up and really learning the game, and I think enjoying it. Hopefully gives him a little bit of success and wants to come back and get him play one more year. But then running backs, Braden Groshik and Bryson Schmidt, he's a sophomore. He'll end up being our quarterback next year more than likely. But they've been kind of platooning at a running back role. It's kind of nice because when one breaks off a big one, the other one knows to go in. Like, we don't have to worry about substituting. They kind of take turns on their own, and we trust them, doing that as a coaching staff. So it makes my job a lot easier when you have that trust with those guys, and you have the athletic talent that we have in our skill positions.
Yeah, and I think you kind of touched on it. What a great X factor it is when you have a quarterback who can run. Obviously, his passing efficiency is great, and it's nice to have those really good receivers and that stable of running backs who each have their own role or carved out their niche. But it's when you look at winning a conference championship or making deep runs in the playoffs, you got to be able to do something a little bit different than everybody else. So having a quarterback who can rush for 100 yards on any given night is really an X factor, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's huge. I mean, I think our quarterback's got to be our number one running back in our offense. If he's, a pocket passer, well, then you can go out there and you can play a man in a zone and put guys locked in everybody with over the top, and you're not going to have that running threat where you got to respect everything. All 6 guys who can get the ball, you got to respect. Makes it a lot easier, and for other defenses, they got to prepare for. One game we'll rush the ball 30 times and do really well. Where the next game, it's kind of funny. Our linemen, they love the run block. They like to go out there, and they're they work hard. And I said, I'll never forget the one time, I can't remember what game it was against, but when our center Charlie Nowinski goes, just keep throwing the ball. We're like, oh, he's never said that before. Usually he gets mad and comes over to the sideline, and that's what we're doing, because sometimes we get too fancy and we want to see if things are working, and I'll stall a drive on my fault, and for when Charlie came over and goes, just keep throwing the ball. Okay, I guess if it's taken to us, we'll take it.
Again, we're talking to Jason Rick, the Wittenberg-Burnhamwood head football coach here on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Before we get to this week's game, I wanted to ask you about the program itself, because obviously it's been such a nice run here the last few years. It feels like the program gets stronger each and every year. You have, of course, it's hard to get much stronger than a run to the state semifinals like you had a couple of years ago, but the consistency right now within the program. What's been the key in terms of building the program and then sustaining the program?
I go back to kind of early in the year when someone asked me. I think the winning culture. I mean, when teams are winning games, I think back to 7 years ago when I came back to Wittenberg. They were just starting to be, I think, coming back up to a little. We were having more success. The previous 15 years we were struggling. And coming back into it, I think you start winning. Well, then you get more athletes out. You get those. Nowadays, you get that guy that just wants to play basketball or wants to play baseball. In a small school, you need all programs to feed each other. I talk about wanting the wrestlers to play football because they're going to be great tacklers. The basketball and the baseball players who are you want those guys. And football is probably the easiest one to pick up. Like if you're a senior and you want to try baseball for the first time, it's going to be tough to do. and you hearing the people talk about it, and then all of a sudden, hey, I want to give it a try, and they feel some success, and they taste that, and then they enjoy it, and they want to keep doing it. And I think that winning breeds winning.
Yeah, I think you made some really great points there. I think obviously you guys have in your history a winning tradition, state championship, deep runs in the playoffs, runners up, that sort of thing. And you kind of touched on a little bit earlier. It's not just about getting those kids in school who are your best athletes out. It's about getting enough kids out so you have the depth and you can play 1, 2, maybe even 3 guys at a certain position. When you talk about being consistent and beating teams like Amherst or competing with them in Stratford year in and year out, that's really, in a conference like this, really what it takes is to be able to have that depth and be able to know that when one guy goes down on your line, that's not losing 2 guys and you have other guys to plug it in. Is that kind of what you're seeing right now?
Oh, that's huge for us. This is the first year that we can line up 1 versus 1 and kind of go not scrimmage each other, but we can run the other team's offense against our defense, and we can actually give them a good look. Years past, when someone goes down, you're shifting guys around, and I think I did our guys a disservice in the years past by making them know 2 or 3 positions, just trying to, hey, pick our battles and win it. Where this year, hey, if you're on offense, you're playing an X or a Y or a Z receiver. You don't need to know all of them. If you go down, we trust that next guy is going to step up and fill their role. And that's huge for us this year. We can give guys more breaks. If they need we don't have. I think we have 49 guys right now on the team. I think 7 years ago we had probably 29, 28 guys. And to give your guys a solid scout look, it's tough to do when you only got 28 kids and you got to start 11 of them one way. Well, then you're picking some freshmen who are undersized trying to fill a role. It just wasn't healthy for anybody, and it's been a lot of fun coaching this year.
Speaking of fun game on Friday night, I think, for all the fans and everybody that enjoys high school football here in central Wisconsin. You head off to Stratford, and the schedule makers did you no favors this year with a road game at Amherst and now another road game a couple of weeks later against Stratford. Obviously, their record speaks for itself. So many of these guys part of that state championship team from a year ago, and obviously playing exceptionally good football so far this season. What is the challenge coming up on Friday night?
Oh, they have great tradition. Just year after year, they've been such a strong football team for I can't even remember since when. I mean, they're just notorious. You're going to play Stratford, it's going to be a dogfight. I think back to 2 years ago when we beat them the first time, it was a dogfight. Those are fun games to prepare for. They have a great program. They have a winning tradition. They have guys that tasted success last year. I know they lost a lot of guys, but they also bring back a lot of guys. And the guys who are filling in roles on that team, they know what it's like to win. That's the expectations over there. They're expected to win. They're stepping up. They're not, they're not taking a back seat. They're the next guys expected to get things done. Got a lot of respect for that team over there and their coaching staff. They play the game the right way, and it's going to be a tough game, but it's going to be fun, and that's why these kids, they worked hard all year for it.
That's got to be one of the most exciting parts of being where your program has been at the last 3-4 years and where you're standing right now is that you have the pieces to go over there and compete, right? Like it's not, if you beat them, it's not a fluke. Like you've already beat a really good Amherst team. You're undefeated. You feel good about what you're doing on defense and how you're able to be balanced on offense. It's got to give you that little extra bump with yourself as the coaching staff, but also with the kids to have that confidence.
Oh, 100%. I mean, that's, years ago, you get on the bus ride on, or even playing that JV game going, oh, they got to prepare for Stratford. The game was lost before they even knew who they were playing just because of the name.
Right.
And now it's like, okay, I still think Wittenberg still got places to prove. I think, we don't have the tradition that Stratford has. We've had some down years in there, but I'm glad to see where we're at, and the kids are really excited. This is what they want. Yeah, it's fun to beat up on teams like you had said before. But this is why you play the game. This is why they prepare all week for, all year for. They're hitting the weights. They want to go out there and they want to compete against the best. And to be the best, you got to beat them. And Stratford's won the conference. I don't know, was it last year for sure, and they're a state team, a championship caliber team, and I would expect them to be in the thick of things again this year.
And got to ask about the conference generally. I mean, it's going in, probably is always thinking, Stratford and Wittenberg, Burnhamwood for the last few years, and Amherst, of course. And now we got Weyauwega Fremont undefeated. And, of course, you still have them coming up before the end of the regular season. I mean, you talk about this conference, and, I mean, Shiocton, what they did a year ago. This is a really good football conference, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a great conference. I mean, it's got to be the toughest small conference that there is. I mean, to look at that, like you said, a Shiocton who goes 6-3 on the year and ends up going to state in G7. You got Stratford, who won conference last year but ended up losing to Amherst in the last regular week. They end up going, winning state. 2 years ago, with us making that, a semifinal run. I mean, it's you're going to have some down years with some of these teams, but Spencer Columbus was at state a handful of years ago. It's a it was only going to get tougher with that new realignment, bringing Colby and Marathon, and I can't remember the other team, but bringing those two teams out, and then you're getting rid of the two smaller teams. Like it's a juggernaut conference. I can't remember. I think I was actually talking to Coach Tubbs. It's almost like a super conference. It's going to be tough from here on out.
Yeah, just kind of piggyback what you said about the Stratford game and how tough this conference is right now and how much tougher it's going to be last year. It's definitely a good time for you guys to be in the place where you're at. I love what you said about how the kids you want to play the best and you are playing with confidence as opposed to maybe in the past with fear. What a big motivator that is for kids and then even to continue to work hard in the off season as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if we were on a down year and we were sliding, go back 10 years ago and we were the team that we were, I don't think we would have the success, especially going into the next conference. It would be, we wouldn't have the numbers. Kids wouldn't want to be playing. They're going to see two more, really quality football teams show up in our conference, and they're thinking, why would we want to do this to ourselves? But now it's like, okay, hey, we're winning a little bit. They're going to look forward to it, and there's not going to be any off weeks. It's going to be a grind. I said either you're going to have multiple state championship teams or everybody's going to be too beat up to go anywhere in the playoffs.
Wittenberg Burnhamwood Charger head football coach Jason Rick. Number one, congrats on the success, not just this season, but in recent years for your program. And number two, have fun on Friday night. Enjoy that big one against Stratford.
Oh, thank you. I really look forward to it.
Thanks a lot, Coach. Really looking forward to seeing the outcome Friday night. Best of luck.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Absolutely. Again, Jason Rick, the head football coach of the Stratford Tigers. We're going to take a break. We're going to wrap up our review of last week with the 8-player action and then look ahead to some big games, including that Stratford-Wittenberg-Burnhamwood game as we preview week number 7 of the season coming up. I'm Chad Holmes along with Jason Foster, the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. And welcome back. Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Online at bullfallsradio.com. Mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO and on the Civic Media app. Again, if you miss the program, you can always go to our website, bullfallsradio.com, click on sports, and then you'll be able to hear archives of this show and also our high school play-by-play of Wausau West, Newman Catholic, and Marathon High School Sports. Again, we are very proud to be the only Wausau radio station that still covers play-by-play high school sports for Wausau area schools. With Jason Foster, I'm Chad Holmes, and I'm sure glad we got Jason Rick on because, just to explain, I called and he said he had his phone there and it didn't ring. And I've had that. You've had that happen, I bet you too, where for whatever reason the phone doesn't ring. And then all of a sudden later, like half an hour later, he looks and there's a voice message and he called up during the news. So again, it was really great to really go get a deep dive into a very interesting Wittenberg-Burnhamwood squad. Yeah,
I thought he did a great job. They have a great team. It's also interesting to hear their perspective of what the current conference is, what it's going to look like. like I said, I'm really looking forward to seeing how this matchup goes Friday night. I think that Wittenberg certainly has a lot of tools in their toolbox to compete with Stratford. We'll see. The other very interesting thing or cool thing about the current conference and what it'll be next year is you could most certainly go and lose this game, even maybe lose it in a rough way, and still be really good on the back end of it coming out from a playoff run standpoint. I think I talked about this last week too. I kind of look at like what Rice Lake does. They kind of get beat up a little bit in the big rivers when they're in there, and then it's not uncommon at all to see them playing on Camp Randall on the last day of the season. So I think that's kind of this whole conference, whether it's Amherst or Stratford or Wittenberg Burnhamwood, and next year when you throw Colby in there, there's all these perennial state powerhouses and all these state championships they'll be bringing to that. So it should make for interesting football for sure.
It will, and also, though, at the same time, you hate to see really good football teams struggle to make the playoffs. I mean, really, again, it's wonderful every week, but man, for those programs that are good but just can't quite get to that level, that can be exceptionally frustrating as well. Yeah. I mean, it reminded me again of some of these, like the new Big Ten and stuff like that. You can have a pretty good year and be 7th place. Yeah. I mean, it's like, there was 18 teams in the Big Ten starting next year. It'll be 7th place. That'll be a good year, but it's not going to get you anywhere. Right. So again, that's going to be it's going to be interesting because if you don't I think the coach said something very pertinent. When you have success, it is so much easier to get kids to come out, to be in the weight room in the off season, to be able to sustain a program.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. How fluid these schools of this size and their programs have become over the last 5 to 10 years, kind of like you said earlier about Auburndale, kind of fluctuating back and forth between 8-man and 11-man. And that might be what pushes the needle that direction for some of these teams who are, I don't know exactly what the conference is going to be, but I look at, like, we've talked a lot this year about Abbotsford, Auburndale, Marathon, like how these teams are and where they're at. And
teetering a little bit.
Right, exactly. And if they go into a conference and they're not at a level where they're going to be able to compete right away, and you do start to lose kids, does that push them in the other direction for better or for worse? Right. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see as we move forward.
We need to talk about last week's action in 8-player football. Central Conference, Almond Bancroft knocked off Newman Catholic 52-14. Almond Bancroft now 4-1 overall, 2-0 in the conference. Cardinals fall to 2-3 overall, 1-1 in the league. Again, that score does not properly indicate how that game went. Newman came out and actually scored first. They drove the football exceptionally well in the first half, but they would either have a penalty or some sort of mistake that kind of set them back. And in high school football, you get a 10-yard penalty. It makes it so very difficult. And in the end, Almond Bancroft pulled away late in that football game. Tyler Ackerman, who was our guest last week, another big night. 22 rushes, 201 yards. Had a rough go of it passing, though. 9 of 28, 67 yards. Did have a couple of touchdowns and a pick. Griffin Pent, 13 rushes, 77 yards for Newman. Now, this Almond Bancroft team is very good. Their only loss came on the road at a top ranked Florence squad in overtime back in week number 1. So again, it was an Almond team that is, I think, ready to take that next step. And for the Cardinals, again, they have nobody back. Again, they have everybody coming back next season. So I think a little bit of a transition for the Cards, who are actually playing, I think, some pretty good football based on the inexperience they have. But Almond Bancroft at home, big win for them. I mean, Newman has that target. It's one of those situations where they're going to enjoy beating the Cards, but frankly, I think they better enjoy it this year because it may change next year.
Yeah, I think when we had Tyler on last week on the show, he spoke to kind of what it was going to take to win this game and where they had gone from weeks 1 and 2 when they had lost to what they had done to win 2 games after that. And I think one of the things he said was turnovers and mistakes, and you kind of hit it on the head a little bit. And yeah, Almond Bancroft's a good team, so yes, they force turnovers. I look at his passing numbers, and I would say that probably speaks more to Almond Bancroft's defense than it does. And one other thing, every coach says that every play is designed to, all those offensive coaches, every play is designed to score a touchdown. But I've learned...
That's a Kevin Grundy.
Yeah.
And then Paul Mickling has taken it over. I've been around those two guys for a long time.
I've heard Matt Johnson say that, too.
Yes, he did.
And as a defensive coordinator, what I've learned over the years is that every play is designed to score a touchdown. Very few few of them are designed to get first downs when you get 1st and 20 because of a holding penalty,
Right.
or 1st and 15 when you have a false start. So yeah, those are tough things to overcome, especially if you're in a transition year and you don't have those experienced kids who've done those things in the past.
Other 8-player action last week. Port Edwards now 3-2 overall, 1-1 in the Central. Beat Marion Tigerton 51-26. Hayden Hewitt, 14-17, 244 yards, 4 touchdowns, 9 rushes, 71 yards. Brendan Beck, 16 rushes, 167 yards, and 2 scores. And Wild Rose beat Tri-County. Wild Rose making a nice transition after forfeiting their games in the CWC Small. They're now 3-2. They beat Tri-County 34-14. CWC East, big one between two really good programs, Gilman and Owen Withy. And Gilman stays undefeated, 28-6 over Owen Withy. Owen Withy 3-2 overall. Athens wins their 3rd game of the season, beating Alma Center Lincoln 28-18. And another game, the number 1 ranked team in the state from the CWC West, McDonald, beat Cornell 59-0. It's interesting because, again, I think something to point out when you look at these teams, unlike the 11-man game, those overall records mean a lot in the 8-player game because they put those they put the entirety of the season into the computers, and 16 teams make it. Unlike 11-player, where you're going to see teams with, I think, losing records make the playoffs. In the 8-player game, 5-3 is probably not going to be enough. You want to be 6-2 for sure. We'll wait and see. But boy, every game has exceptional meaning as we come into the last 3 weeks of the season.
Will Gilman and McDonald face off before the end of the year?
No, they will not.
They do not.
They do not. They did
East
not
and
cross.
West.
They were not this year part of the crossover in the first few weeks of the season. So that would have to happen in a playoff game. Which
could be an interesting shootout.
It certainly could. We have to take a break, but we're going to come back and look ahead to week number 7 of the season coming up next. It's the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230, online at bullfallsradio.com, mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app. From our new studios on Washington Street in downtown Wausau, inaugurating the new studio here for this program, I'm Chad Holmes with Jason Foster, and looking ahead, big week 7. I'm going to say big every week because it's always big. Big, big, big. It's going to get bigger and bigger each and every week. And let's start with the Valley Football Association. And we had a chance to talk a bit about this one earlier with our student athlete guest. Again, if you joined us late, normally we have our student athlete at the start of hour number 2. But because it's homecoming over at DC Everest, we brought on Logan George early, the Evergreen junior quarterback. But this week, DC Everest and Hortonville, I have it wrong on the sheet. I know you got it right. Hortonville is at DC Everest coming up on Friday night. Both teams are 3-1 in the conference. Evergreens are 5-1 overall. Hortonville, the Polar Bears, are 4-2. Hortonville coming off a big win against Wausau East. DC Everest, of course, a thriller against Wisconsin Rapids. And I think defenses are the key to this game because Everest has done a nice job holding their opponents pretty well in check. I think outside of the Spash game where they gave up 28 and there was a late touchdown in that one. Otherwise, they've been very good in terms of keeping, for the most part, their opponents in check. And then Hortonville, they're a team that is, their foundation is their defense.
Yeah, I think the fact that Everest has been able to find their running game a little bit, I think serves them well. I don't think it would have been good going into this Hortonville game if they had to rely on just throwing the ball to win. But this is it. These are the games in the VFA that are exciting to me. And the Everest Hortonville, I mean, there's really nothing decided. I mean, Spash probably gets one this week, but seeing what happens in the Marshfield Rapids game and what it looks like for Spash, I mean, can Marshfield give Spash a game down the road? Mm-hmm. West has Appleton West this week, but no, the DC Everest Hortonville kind of starts off like formalizing what that 2, 3, and 4 look like in the VFA this year.
Marshfield at Wisconsin Rapids, I would say this is a playoff game. I mean, this for Marshfield, they're 2-2, but they got tough games coming up, as you said, against Stevens Point. I think Hortonville to wrap up the season, if I'm not mistaken. Wisconsin Rapids, they're 0-6, but they can make the playoffs. Yeah. If they get this game, they then have, you would call the lower end teams in the conference. Obviously, you have to go out there and do it, but they still have an opportunity because I've said this during the course of this show. So much of it is who have you played and who haven't you played?
Right.
Who have you played the powerhouse team so far? And that's what Rapids has done. They've had some tough losses. I mean, last week was a great boy. They have to be thinking, we were so close to really giving ourselves a really good opportunity. But still, I mean, they're home again. It's the third straight week they're playing a home game. And for Marshfield, they don't want to have to beat Stevens Point, have to beat Hortonville. This is a Week 7 playoff game, really.
Yeah, Marshfield has not had a great win yet. They've kind of won the games they should win and maybe didn't even compete as well as they thought they might have in some of those tougher ones earlier in the season. Combined with the fact that the game that I've seen them live this year, they didn't do a very good job of stopping the run, and to watch for the Rapids rush for over 200 yards last week against a tough DC Everest defense. So yeah, this should be a good one and could go either way. Certainly would not surprise me to see Rapids get their first win of the year.
Right, and that's the thing. Rapids, it feels like, though I thought last week, they were due. I mean, that program is too solid. I mean, Tony Biola's been around for such a long time. They got a couple of pretty good studs on the defensive side as well. For them to go this far, again, it's one of those years they probably wish the non-conference schedule was a little different. I mean, because that can kind of set a tone, can it? When you lose a couple of games, when you're in a bit of a rebuilding, because they lost all their skill position players. I think those first two games made it a little tough to break the momentum, and then to have to play Wausau West in the first conference game, who were preseason favorite in the conference. And then the jug game against Stevens Point. I mean, all the tough games at the front end of the schedule. It's hard, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It sure would have been nice for them to experience a little success early and maybe get some of those more mistakes out of the way. But then I go back to, I mean, how tough they played West, and I think they were up early on Spash, and how close what the DC Everest game was last week. I think that they could certainly. I mean, I think they're realistic, so they knew who they are and what it might look like if they do make the playoffs. But they do have a great opportunity to play spoiler down the stretch.
Wausau East at Stevens Point. Obviously, Stevens Point has to be feeling really good. Some big wins against the big rivals of DC Everest and Wausau West last 2 weeks. This is, again, one of those games where the mental aspect will be vital. And for Wausau East mentally, I mean, coming off a really rough game last week at Hortonville, facing another really good team on the road. They've been playing so many road games. They've had one official home game all season long. That's been tough for the Lumberjacks. But for Stevens Point, it's about taking care of business, isn't it?
Yeah, staying focused. I think that, like we said earlier in this, they're definitely in the driver's seat in the conference right now. And Wausau East looks back to, I mean, it's a tough pill to swallow to have less than 100 yards of offense when they had been doing some nice things earlier in the year. So they're definitely looking to get back on track, maybe get some of those big plays, do some things on special teams. But certainly, obviously, Spash is favored big in this one, but it'd be nice to see Wausau East get back on track a little bit.
Favored big as well as Wausau West. Homecoming for the Warriors at Tom Field on Friday night, hosting Appleton West. Well, again, I mean, there's really no way to sugarcoat it. It's been a rough season for Appleton West. Wausau West obviously wants to come out and execute this week, don't they?
Yeah, they made a lot of mistakes last week. They got dinged up. They turned the ball over. So those are all things, regardless of who your opponent is, you spend all this week looking to fix and correct. And like I said, come out and do what you're supposed to do against a team like this, without the turnovers, without the penalties, without the mistakes. And this will be a good opportunity to do that, and also maybe get healthy, as they lost a couple guys during that game last week.
Great Northern Conference gets underway tomorrow night as Lakeland will try to continue their second half surge. Thunderbirds are at Ashland. We'll give you all 4 games and we kind of put them into a bowl of conversation here. Friday night, Mosinee looking to stay undefeated in the conference at Antigo. Medford looking to stay undefeated in the conference at Rhinelander, who looks to get back on the winning track after a 4-win start to the season, but now back-to-back shutouts the last 2 weeks. And Merrill looking to get that first win of the season. Another long trek for the Jays, traveling up to Hayward. When you look at those games, what jumps out?
I think, kind of like you've already touched on, Lakeland's probably going to keep rolling. The only thing that might be a barrier for them is the long trip up to Ashland.
Well, they're up north too.
Yeah, that's true. It's not quite as far as it is for some of the others. Mosinee, I don't see, based on what Lakeland did at with Anago last week, I would say Mosinee probably going to jump that one. And Rhinelander's struggling to score points right now. Medford's playing great D and has a great running game, so that'll be a tough one for them. And Hayward, probably their opportunity to get back on the winning track this week and maybe see what their playoff picture could potentially be with but this is definitely a win for them and probably a tough one for Merrill, knowing that Hayward has had some success and they've really struggled to get on the board.
Merrill Conference, always three good matchups. I will be heading to Colby on Friday night, live right here on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230, bullfallsradio.com, mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app as the Marathon Red Raiders travel to Colby. And Colby, again, so very impressive last week against Pittsville. Marathon have to tighten it up defensively because the Raiders offensively, they've been able to throw the ball pretty well. Cooper Huxham at quarterback. You got True Thurs now has been running the ball very well. But obviously they're going to have to find a way to slow down a pretty good run game for the Colby squad. And obviously as well, it's going to be a tougher defense they're facing this week. But for Marathon, you got to find that next conference win.
Yeah, at Colby certainly makes it harder for Marathon, and Colby plays great defense. So I think that might slow down Marathon as well. That is probably going to be a tall order, and I think Colby is definitely looking to establish themselves as the number 2 as they prepare heading into probably what's going to be a nice playoff run for them as well.
And the two undefeateds are in action. Edgar will travel to Pittsville. Again, Pittsville, after all the good work they've done, now you get Colby last week and now Edgar this week. And Auburndale will try to stay undefeated as Abbotsford comes into town. I think that will be, again, a tough one for the Abbey Falcons, but it lines up as Edgar and Auburndale continuing to win and get towards a showdown perhaps for the conference championship.
Yeah, and I don't know. I still feel like with that running game, Abbotsford does have the opportunity to maybe give Auburndale a fight here and maybe make a little bit of noise before it's done.
CWC Large, Wittenberg, Burnhamwood at Stratford. We talked a lot about that with Coach Rick. Man, if they go into Amherst and win, and then go into Stratford and win, that would be just an incredible 3-week stretch for Whitburn, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I don't know how much more confidence you could have going into the postseason with those
probably a number 1 seed.
Yeah, with those 2 wins on your resume, being undefeated. They did have to work a little harder than they probably expected last week, so I'm sure that's in the back of their mind a little bit. And Stratford has just been rolling, so it would be great for Wittenberg to go over there and give them a game, come out with a win. But I think there's also the fairly good possibility that Stratford's going to prove that they are in mid to late season form and ready to make a deep playoff run once again.
And actually a very interesting game in Amherst as well. Wyowega Fremont undefeated. Again, they're right there with those other teams in the conference. Amherst right now 500. They want to get that W. They don't want to be just sneaking into the postseason. They want to get as good a seeding as they possibly can. But for Wyowega Fremont, again, they took a big step last season getting to the postseason, and now they're taking another step as they start off the gauntlet of the final 3 games of the regular season. Obviously, they're a little bit further away from us here in central Wisconsin, but it's been very interesting to see them kind of work their way into the conversation in a very good league.
Yeah, and it seems when you look at Amherst this year that they're probably down a little bit this year. I think that you could say that looking at the teams they've struggled with a little bit. Is this Wyowega's opportunity to be the number 3 team in this conference, at least for this year? And I think this is a kind of a statement game for Amherst. Is this, how do we put them away and then kind of look at these last 2 weeks as they have all those other tough teams in their rearview mirror and gear up for a tough playoff run? But yeah, I've been intrigued by Wyowega Fremont, so it'll be interesting to see what they can do.
Manawa at Shiocton as well, and Nakusa at Spencer Columbus. CWC Small, Iola Scandinavia, looking like they are moving towards a playoff spot. They will host Rosholt. Assumption and Loyal is actually an interesting game because Assumption needs to win that game. Loyal show that they can compete, almost knocking off Iola last week at home, so that's a very interesting game. And Pacelli, with their forfeit win over Wild Rose, will travel to Kingdom Prep Lutheran on Saturday. I guess of those games, Assumption, I'm curious to see if they can start to get that defense consistently better because they had such a rough go of it for about 3 weeks there. Better against Pacelli, but Loyal's going to be a physical football team. They always are over in that part a little bit west of here. But for Assumption, they got to win that one.
Yeah, these games have so much meaning based on those crossover games early. So definitely one Assumption wants to get, and Loyal definitely looking to play spoiler.
And finally, as well, I want to mention an 8-player this weekend. Saturday, we'll have the game right here on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230 is Newman Catholic for their homecoming plays host to Marion Tigerton. Marion Tigerton's struggling right now, but the Cardinals right now to any chance to get to 5-3. They got to win these final 3 games, and obviously the Cards back at home need to start off a pretty good stretch with a W.
Yeah, lots of homecoming going on in the city of Wausau, Schofield, Weston this weekend. So I know 3 principals, athletic directors, and head coaches who will be happy on Sunday of this week.
Something you mentioned before as well. It's going to be hot again.
Yes.
We're week 7. We have not had that dose of real football weather, have we?
No, we have not. Knock on wood, we also haven't had any rain or storms, so that's
I know, huh?
So that's been kind of nice. But yeah, I'm ready to start wearing a jacket on Friday nights, and that sun's setting a little bit earlier and cooling down. So I'm done with the 80s, but I know a lot of people like it, so I'll keep my mouth shut.
60 seconds to go. What are you looking at this weekend?
I'm excited to see the DC Everest Hortonville game. I'm excited to see what Rapids and Marshfield, kind of who's going to rise up out of that game. And then for sure the Whitburn Stratford game will be the one that I look for the score first when I get home tomorrow night or Friday night.
Friday night. And again, a little off the beaten path, Weyauwega, Fremont, and Amherst. I'm curious to see if Weyauwega takes that next step on the road at Amherst, and also even Assumption. It was supposed to be, I think, a team that was going to be at the top of the league. They got to beat Loyal, or else their hopes for playoffs, I think, will be slipping away. So we'll have to wait and see. But lots of interesting games. Thanks again to Logan George from DC Everest and Jason Rick from Whitburn for joining us. Thanks again to Jason Foster as well.
Yeah, great new digs here. This is awesome. Exciting.
Maybe I'll be in the same room with you next week.
Looking forward to it.